Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, the regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk at the Nasdaq market site is we have Dr. Merav Ozair, global leading emerging technologies expert, as well as Dan Gremmell, chief data officer at Zinnia, and we have Michael Marrale, CEO of M Science, and we are here to discuss the evolving nature of AI and how that is impacted by data privacy. It is great to have everyone with us. And Mike, I want to kick it off with you. When we think about how AI is learning and evolving, I mean, we know Moore's law, evolution is breakneck. Technology is evolving so quickly around these models. And then you also think about user experience as well.
Absolutely, and thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, everything's evolving at breakneck speed. And you know, at M Science, when we think about our AI strategy, we really want to be agnostic to platform solutions. We want to make sure that we're not spending too much time building things that we don't have to. You know, given the speed of the evolution, we could spend months building something, and by the time we're ready to go to market with it, it's already obsolete. We also want to be very nimble. We want to make sure that our AI stack is pluggable and we can substitute vendor solutions. And we really just want to be creative around our core IP, and that's where we spend time building things.
And Merav, it's, you know, to Mike's point here, it's almost an arms race among the tech giants.
Yeah, it is an arms race. I mean, you can hear, you know, all the, you know, the tech moguls, whether the Jensen Huang and Musk and all the others, you know, all talking about the next big things and the next year and what's going to happen and all. And the interesting part, I mean, when you think about it, NVIDIA is not even competing against anyone. They compete against themselves. If you think about it, you know, you just mentioned Moore's law. I mean, they are beyond Moore's law. Moore's law is like every iteration. Every iteration, like every 100. 100x is every 10 years or something like that. They in 8 years, you know, accelerate the computing 1,000x. So it's beyond Moore's law, and they going. And he said even in his articles is that it's not even enough. So who knows? Maybe next time it's going to be I know 10,000x. I have no idea.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the historical context because Dan, AI is a field. This isn't new.
No, you're absolutely right. And we think about that a lot at Zinnia. Zinnia is a life and an annuities tech company that focuses on building solutions for carriers and distributors. And I think it's helpful to look back at where we've been with the history in AI. And the field's been around since the 50s. We've been here before. We've seen a lot of these hype trains that have come through and all of the big promises made. And really, when it comes down to it, what are we going to do with it is what really matters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about it, Mike, you know, the rise of large language models in November of 2022 became part of our vernacular, right? With the introduction of ChatGPT and, you know, what you can do with Gen AI.
Yeah, I think to Dan's point earlier, Wall Street has gotten this right for a long time. You know, Wall Street is, especially on the quant side, has been a model-driven industry.
Right.
And big tech has been really a software business, you know, with an advertising overlay. And so now I think big tech has to become model-driven. So that's opening up massive possibilities in terms of, you know, what we can do leveraging big tech. Like our view is let big tech fight it out, let them build all the core infrastructure, and then we just layer on top. But it was that November moment that set everyone in motion, and essentially every CEO in the world has, you know, they're losing sleep at night because they're worried about losing share and losing time.
Right. But Merav, you and I have discussed this before. Just investing in the tech stack is not enough. You have to have a problem that you're looking to solve.
Exactly. I mean, now everyone wants to say, oh, we want to implement Gen AI, we want to generative AI. I mean, and on all of this, but you have to have why. I mean, what's the problem? I mean, sometimes you don't need to. I mean, maybe it's an overkill. You don't need that. I mean, in fact, you know, I'm not really a big fan of LLMs. No, seriously. I mean, we all like, you know, in the American culture, the big portions, you know, like you put them, you know, on the plate and you go to the buffet, and even all doctors will tell you, this is not healthy for you. Well, it's not healthy also for AI, because if you, smaller language, what we call like small language models, more customized, more tax specific, which what you have in finance. In fact, they're very specific, very customized, are better because you have more control on the data. They are more robust, they're more accurate. All the interpretable, auditable, and all the issues that you have with security and privacy, you can control it. So slim and I guess you have to be slim, not heavy. In that case.
So Dan, we understand what some of the shortcomings could potentially be, but there are business benefits associated with LLMs.
There are absolutely business benefits associated with LLMs. In the insurance space where I do a ton of my work, there's specific fields and sections of the insurance space that are relevant for LLMs, like product development and design, sales and advice, underwriting, policy administration and claims, and even the customer service space that's being drastically overtaken by LLMs and Gen AI. We built a contact center solution at Zinnia that helps us assess the quality of our agents on the phone, the responses they're giving, better driving that customer experience. And back to Merav's point, like we're really focused on the problems we can solve, and Gen AI is just another model to us. It goes into our tool belt just like machine learning, deep learning, other types of AI algorithms that have existed before. And we really just use it to solve the problems that we're trying to solve in the insurance space. So there's a lot of benefits with ops efficiency, even in technology with coding and code development and code creation. A lot of those benefits are kind of like starting to rear their heads, if you will. I don't think we've seen the productivity gains in the market that we want to see yet from AI just yet, but there's a lot of use cases that seem very promising with content creation.
To Dan's point about productivity, we just read a report from KPMG, and they were saying that the productivity is not there yet. Everyone wishes that that's going to be like, tomorrow you're going to, I don't know, everyone is going to work on it 2 days a week, but we're not there yet.
I think it's not there yet.
Yeah, we have experiments, we see 100%. Some experiments, but it's not there yet.
I think it's not there yet because large enterprises are spending a lot of time cleaning up their data.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. I think everyone's late to the game in data cleanup. That's where you're seeing platforms like Databricks really flourish. And yes, they are developing AI solutions along the way, but I think about 2022 as like 23 is an experimental kind of play with the new toys type of year. 24 is building solutions, and where are you in your data cleanup process? And 25 is about execution.
Right. See, and that's kind of a concern that, at least in my mind, reporting on this in 2024, that everyone is rushing to go to the market to show that they have an AI story, attach their name, just as reminds me of blockchain in 2018, where everyone was trying to attach that to their stories.
And then they have a problem.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Everyone wants to go to market first. I know you have to prove you have revenue lines and ARR and so forth, but are we thinking about it enough from a risk management perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective, from a data privacy perspective? And I think, and that's the way we've been covering it on the show here, not necessarily what stock is associated with the AI story, but when we first started covering it on the show, the subjectivity of it, the ethical use of it.
Exactly.
Data in, data out, responsible, ethical
100%.
use. And I think that is the bigger story versus what stock has exposure to it.
Well, and I think that's why you're not seeing a lot of those productivity gains yet in the market and with businesses, is because they have to use their data to really get the biggest benefits out of Gen AI and other AI-based algorithms. And so, working in data for years, like a big struggle, what we have to do is clean our data, get in a format where we can use it. And because we have a data strategy, that's helped us kind of move a little quicker with some of those implementations. But coming back to risk for a second, right? And regulations can be dampening on innovation, but when you're looking at what we're seeing now in the market, which is just an AI arms race, some of those regulations can actually be helpful to ensure we don't get to a place where it's super dangerous when it comes down to it with the rise of things like
especially financial services, one of the most heavily regulated industries.
But you don't need to, sorry.
Please, we've been working with data for 2 decades, and compliance is a huge component of what we do. And so, to Merav's point earlier in terms of solving problems and answering questions, we're taking an agentic approach. So while we have an agentic content approach to helping investors perform better, we're also taking an agentic approach from the compliance side, because we operate in the world of not only data privacy laws and regs, but also federal securities laws.
So, you don't have to wait for regulations to be what we call responsible. If
100%.
you have to do it right. And in fact, maybe there are no federal regulations, but there are all kinds of rules coming up from the FTC and CNBC. So you have that, and especially in the financial industry, which is highly regulated, it doesn't have to be specific to AI, but it's enough to say security, privacy. Being, a fiduciary responsibility, all of that, it's enough. You don't need the AI because it's already embedded there.
And that's a great point that you bring up, and we've covered something similar in terms of leveraging AI for human resources, where how do we know if the AI models are complying to EEOC standards? It doesn't matter whether it's a person or an AI program.
Exactly.
The standards exist.
Exactly.
And for whatever's on the books right now, you have to adhere to those standards.
If you look at what's recently come out of the CFPB, Section 1033, it's all about secondary use cases of data. So, the rules are in effect and evolving, but to your point, Merav, the rules exist whether it's AI driven or not.
Exactly. So you have to follow those rules regardless if it's AI or not AI. And the financial industry have been using AI, anyways, forever. So it's not really new for that, in that purpose. So,
And building on that point, right, because AI has become a lot easier for a lot of people to use, you introduce more of that risk and some of those considerations not being taken into consideration. Me being on a team that focuses on building data, building AI solutions, we've been building models for years to be ethical when it comes down to it, to reduce bias, to ensure that we have human in the loop training so that we don't get an adverse outcome that is either not in compliance with laws, but also that is also not negative for our customers at the end of the day.
I think that industries like the finance, which is very regulated, and data. It's all data driven. All the financial models, they are data driven. I think that industries like that, when it comes to AI, it's not. It's kind of an evolution. It's not something completely new. So I think that they are more prepared when it comes to all the ethical issues, the risk management. They understand risk more than any other industry, if you ask me. So that's something that they don't have to figure it out. But the other industries, for them, it's like, oh, there's something new, here, and they're trying to figure out how they can use it. So they probably never use the data. They don't know how to use data. They don't understand even that data is a driver here.
Mike, look at the way the role of content and marketing and communications has evolved, right? When I first started here 7 years ago, it was, email generation and so forth. They brought me on so we can have video content for our clients and partners. Look at it now. You almost have to be a data scientist to run an effective marketing organization.
Right, and the multimodality aspect to the more recent LLMs that have been launched are really driving that, right? So if you think about, what are these LLMs really trying to achieve? Ultimately, they're trying to hit all modalities, right? Text, audio, vision, speech, and that is going to, shed a lot of light on good actors and bad actors at the end of the day. To me, you either have a strong value system with regard to ethics or you don't, and how far you're willing to push will separate the winners and the losers, I think, because I do think that the backlash for bad actors will be even more severe than what we've seen in the past.
We've also covered this. Think about content moderation when it comes to Section 230, right? And establishing, because that's very subjective, perhaps not in the lens of the law, but for users of those platforms, it's subjective in terms of what you might think is ethical and what I don't. So there technically.
But there are things that I think that everyone can agree on. For example, the issue, with Scarlett Johansson and with the voice.
With the fake AI,
So they use it and then they put it down because, it kind of got viral, and there was a big debate and all of that. And there's, whether, even if it's not regulated, but there are all kinds of other laws like the publicity right that I think there was an issue, there was a case, in the 90s that Bette Midler, against that I think Ford used their voice in an advertisement, and then she won. So you do not need, it doesn't have to be AI, but
I mean, there's precedent on the books as it relates to who owns what.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right.
And coming back to Section 230 for a second, right? It can be, content moderation itself can be very subjective when it comes down to it. The way that images are displayed and what's in them and what they're used for really matters. And that's where we're not at yet when it comes down to AI. And that requires human level intelligence, it requires consciousness, and it requires moral reasoning. And those are things that the current state of LLMs just aren't good at.
Exactly. AI fail miserably when it comes to reasoning.
Yeah.
And common sense, forget about it. They're not even there.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're
LLMs
not there.
still can't do math, right?
Exactly.
And so,
So
Hardly,
though, I
yeah.
mean, you know, if we're talking about Gen AI specifically, again, for the average user to understand what it is, what is it, 18 months or just about 2 years?
So early.
Yeah.
Right?
it's early.
No, but Gen AI, I mean, the transformer, I mean, have been
Yeah,
like ways back. I mean,
But the way like the everyday person uses it.
yeah, exactly. The acceleration now, yeah.
If
that's
you,
it.
if an analogy would be to the major social networks as that little industry, now massive industry, was evolving, Facebook was the 9th player in the space. You know, Google was probably the 15th search engine that actually gained popularity, right? So there is this race, but sometimes you got to take a step back and make sure you're doing everything right, planning for the future, and ultimately 5 years from now, probably the leaders today may not be the leaders down the road.
Yeah, I mean, look at from the late 90s, who was ahead of the race and who wasn't. But I mean, let's go back to Google for a moment here, and even those, you know, intermediary platforms. And I know, you know, you were talking about content and marketing here.
Yeah.
This happened so fast. What does this do to the world of SEO? I mean, that gets the strategy shifts around quick.
Absolutely, and it's one of those fields that's going to keep shifting. I mean, look what Google did by releasing LLM-based responses in the top of search.
Right.
Immediately overnight, what that did is blew up a lot of companies' SEO strategies.
Right.
And so it's going to be a period of adapting. There's going to be a period of up and down. There's going to be a period of things that we'll need to react to quickly. But you know, you've got to be paying attention to what's going on in the news. Got to be paying attention to what Google's doing. But coming back to like the points around regulation, it's, you know, people like at Zinnia, like we're building on top of models that are, you know, built because they're large, they're difficult to train, they're expensive to train, they require large data centers on top of that. So we're not going to go build that kind of technology. And so I'm less worried about the regulation on application and more worried about the regulation on who's building what and how they're using it, and keeping that both transparent to everybody in the industry, as well as understanding like how those models are assessed for bias and risk and all those other types of measures.
But to Dan's point, I mean, when you're talking about transparency, I think that that's a major problem in this industry. Even those, you know, large companies, you know, the Google and the OpenAI and all that, they're not that transparent. I mean, you don't know what data sources they're using. You don't know anything about the models. Yeah. Even those who claim that they're open source, they're not really open source. It's a weight. They tell you about the weights, not about the data, not about the model, not nothing. Well, so it's, I mean, it is a black box in the sense that you don't know what they have in the inside, so you don't know how the output is going to look like.
I actually just saw something in the news today where a couple of current and former employees of OpenAI and Google released a signed statement to push for more regulation and transparency from the big tech companies that are building these systems, because they're people that have been in the door and have seen the practices there, and they're interested in making that more transparent to the general market. And now I might sound like a doomsayer when it comes to AI, but I'm not. I'm optimistic about the future and where we're going. There's just a lot of different problems that we need to tackle as we keep kind of moving here. And you know, as a business trying to use AI, it can be a challenging landscape, but also like we've seen a lot of value internally from utilizing AI when it comes down to it. And
all right, and we're at time here, so Mike, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we could go all day with this.
Yeah.
Last
I
word,
would just say, you know, at M Science, across our team, 180 people, we're really just encouraging everyone to immerse themselves in this new technology, be fluent, make sure that you're protecting yourself from a career standpoint. You know, we're not seeing unemployment as a result of AI quite yet, but I think that shoe probably drops mid next year as execution phase kicks in. And those who aren't up to speed, up to par in this area, I think are going to have, you know, trouble moving forward. So really encouraging everyone to just dive all in.
All right, appreciate everyone's insight. Thanks for joining us on
you.
Trade Talks.
Thank
and thanks for joining me from MarketSite. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.